first want to say thank you so, so, so very much from the depths of my being for just wanting to be a part of this with me and
100%.
um, just offering me your wisdom and your voice. And I feel like so many of us who have like been going through shit and like have a lot to go through, right? Like not just
God, yeah.
in our adulthood, but our childhood too. It's
All
so,
of it.
yeah, it's so important for us to find our voice. And so that's really what I hope today will feel like for you as much as it does for anybody listening, is just like,
Yeah.
this is a place of real, raw authenticity. And this is our lives. These are the stories of our lives. Isn't that like a,
I know. I think it's a show.
of course.
Days of Our Lives.
Yeah,
It's like
Days
a
of Our
soap.
Lives. That's a soap opera. Oh my God. Pretty sure my
No,
great
I think
grandmother
it's true.
watched.
I think it's so true though. I mean, like, I think I've been like telling people about it. I'm just telling them like I'm just so excited for you because this is like a new part of your journey. And I was telling them, I was like, it's just going to be exactly what you said. It's going to be so raw and so real. And I was so excited when you were telling me I'd get to be on it because I was like, this just feels right. Like you're one of the few people who I can like so openly and honestly like communicate all my feelings to no matter what. So to be able to like help you with this platform, I'm like so excited.
I'm so glad. Like you were definitely like of the first few people that I thought of. I was like, well, duh.
I know.
So
I'm so happy to be able to help
yay.
with this too.
Yay. No, it means the world. It's such a cool thing. I definitely am like, all right, let's see what happens, because
Yeah.
it's like you hear podcasts all the time. Like podcasts are happening all the time. I just think
Yeah.
my hope is that like this can be a space for everyone to feel more normal, like really honestly more normal. Like that this
And
should,
seen, I think.
and seen, yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Like this is going on all the time. People are going
Yeah.
everything all the time. So to take a moment to really sit in it and be like, this is what's up, I think is something really special. So again, thank you. And I'm so
Yeah.
grateful. Um, so yeah, if you're comfortable, you want to just dive right into the good, juicy stuff.
100%.
Okay.
Always get into the
Perfect.
fire.
Yes. Yes. That is so wonderful. So I have a notebook here with me because, I might think of something random and I'm
I
like
know. I have my
looking
little
down.
I have my phone with my little notes too in case. So if I
Perfect.
randomly look at my phone, it's because I have those open.
No, perfect. Totally fine. So today well, let me first let you introduce yourself.
Yeah.
Everyone know who you are.
So my name is Sage. I'm 26. Yeah, 26. I live in Pennsylvania. I was out in Colorado the past 3 years where I met the lovely, lovely Floyd, who we're here with today. And we connected mainly because I reached out to you from the beginning. I followed Floyd's partner on social media and he had posted and I was like, oh, she looks fucking dope. And I think she can help me with all my problems in the world. And so I reached out and here we are now. And you have been such a blessing in my life, honestly. But yeah, and so I think the biggest thing I guess to introduce myself with is, all my mentees, I was diagnosed with BPD in 2020 or 2019, I think one of those years, who knows?
Right.
Along with a bunch of other bullshit. But yeah, and I've just been dealing with it for who knows how long. And yeah, I don't know. There's not much else to me.
Yeah, no, that's perfectly fine. Whatever you want to, however you want to lay that out is perfect. So as Sage mentioned, I met her through social media and it blossomed into a client relationship and then blossomed further into a friendship that is now so dear to my heart. And like you moving was like the worst thing ever, but it was also so important
Yeah.
to you. And so, and I'm sure we'll get to that
Yeah.
and how that all transpired because it
Yeah,
definitely
for
takes
sure.
place. But yeah,
Yes.
so for you, like, how did it come up that you were like, okay, I'm struggling in a way that's different than other people? Like, how did you really start to recognize that maybe there was something more going on than just, oh, I'm having a hard time right now?
Yeah, for sure. So I think for me, I always really, really struggled with my ups and downs. And, I had like a really rough childhood. So my dad was like never really in the picture. My mom had me really young and wasn't in the picture here and there on and off a lot. Not to say she's not a great mom, she's amazing, but we have our differences. And I think a lot of those differences stemmed from when I was younger and that resentment. So I always struggled with my emotions, I think, because of that. And then when I was in high school, I was so depressed and my emotions were all over the place and, hormones and all that bullshit. And it kind of just went from there and I didn't think much of it. I got diagnosed with depression and anxiety and, struggled with that. And then when I was in college was when I really started to notice such a difference in my emotions. And, my suicidal tendencies were just like absolutely roaring. And I was, driving down a road and I'm like, I could just do it right now, but it probably wouldn't work. And it was the only thing that was stopping me. Or I would wake up one morning and have no will to even move and I would skip a whole day of class.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad is bipolar. And so I said to myself, I was like, you know what, maybe that's what this is. I need to figure it out. And so I think that was like the major point for me was probably like my junior year of college. I was like, I'm not okay. I'm something is seriously wrong with me.
Yeah.
I need to get it figured out. And so that's kind of where I was like, I need to take action. For so long, I didn't care enough to take action. And it just hit me one day. I was like, I'm when I was a freshman, I tried killing myself and it obviously didn't work. And I'm very happy to still be here now. But
Yeah. Thank the universe and
June,
God.
yeah. And so junior year of college was when those tendencies were really, really getting bad again. And I was like, you know what? I'm either going to end up in a hospital again or something
Mm-hmm.
like that,
Mm-hmm.
or not here at all. And so if I want to be here, I need to do something about it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm really, again, just you're here for a reason. That's actually something
Yeah.
in your notes.
Yeah. A hundred
Um,
percent.
but you're so on point with the fact that having a childhood where there are whether willing or unwilling, involuntary or voluntary, it is what it is. There's something that happens to us when we have neglectful parents or we have a tumultuous childhood, even if it's 1 year of our first eight
Yeah.
years. That time period is so fundamental, and every experience that goes into our childhood becomes, like I said, the foundation of who we are, kind of where we grow from and where we build from. So if we have a
Yeah.
lot of cracks in our foundation, we're not going to feel stability. We're not going to feel a sense of self or security because we've been struggling our entire life, literally, to
100%. Yeah.
survive it and like to get through it and to manage these really deep um core emotions and wounds that you
Yeah.
don't have the language for when you're a child.
Oh, 100%. I
Yeah.
think that was something I really struggled with that definitely like continued into adulthood too, was like I was feeling these emotions tenfold. And I
Mhm.
think that's something that a lot of people with BPD struggle with is that, one person's 10 is like the scale is just insane. Like
Yes,
someone's 1 is my 10 and their 10 is like my 100. And,
right.
you know, someone says something, someone texts me wrong. I think about it the whole day.
Mhm.
And for all it is, they just might be sending me a quick text, but it's because your emotions are so heightened with
Yes,
something like that. But especially when you're younger, you don't even know
totally.
how to handle it.
Yeah.
It's
And it
crazy.
no, it really is. And it makes you feel crazy, right? And so then
So crazy.
there's that added layer of like, what the fuck is wrong with me? It becomes
100%.
an internal dialogue almost immediately. And when that's happening
Mhm.
so young and you're unable to then express your internal experience, it's like suffocating. And you're just like,
Yeah.
everything is like coming in on you. And it's so uncomfortable. And like, then that hypervigilance slash hyper independence can show up,
Yeah.
just like always on high alert because your nervous system has never lived in a place where it's like chill
Yeah.
and we're okay and everything's safe and I'm safe and I'm being held,
Yeah.
people around me, I'm supported, I'm comforted, I'm and no parent is perfect. No, as I've
Hmm.
become a parent, I've had to realize it's like no matter what I do, I'm going to do something that kind of fucks up my kid or
Yeah.
doesn't really suit them, or there's just going to be challenges no matter what in parenthood. Nobody's perfect. um but there's certainly a way to show up for your children, and there's definitely a way to help them through these issues. So I think also your perspective on this now as a adult, looking back at yourself as a child, we have the language, and so we're able to communicate it. And I think what happens too is we're like, oh wow, this is a lot, and like I'm
Yeah.
not really sure how I'm going to go through this because I already know that my support system isn't really that great, or it's
Yeah.
flawed or whatever. So you're like, you don't want to dive into it almost. You want to keep pushing it away. You want to keep suppressing it, or you just want to keep allowing it to exist because it's like almost, I don't know, for me, when I was diagnosed with BPD, it kind of became like not an excuse, but I was like, oh, well, that makes a lot of sense. So like now I
Hmm.
know why I am the way I am, but I don't necessarily think I can change that. Right. Like
Yeah. I
why is,
think I was totally in the same boat. Like
yeah,
when I was first diagnosed with it, it was like, okay, cool, I have this. This is why I do all the things I do. And now I don't care. And like, I think for like 2 or 3 years after that, I was like, didn't give a fuck. I was like, oh, well, I just have BPD. I'm allowed to act this way. I'm allowed to feel these feelings.
mm,
Don't get me wrong. I felt shitty afterwards.
sure.
Anytime, even now, I do something that I know upsets someone, it's embarrassing and I feel bad. But back then, I didn't give a fuck and I
Yeah.
still would go about it because you have this now and it's okay because you have this and you can focus on that and not focus on
Right.
like everything else.
Yes. And I think too, like the saying hurt people.
Yeah.
Um, I think that that extends to a personal relationship with yourself where you're kind of trying to, like you're describing, trying to take back the power, take back the sense of security and safety of like, well, if life is shit and everything sucks and I can't trust anybody, because it does come down to that like fundamental security trust thing,
Yeah.
I'm going to do whatever makes me feel good in the moment,
Right.
or whatever makes sense to me in the moment, literally, because it is like moment to moment.
No, it seriously is. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But
And
it's
so,
so true, like what you're saying. Like,
yeah. And you get stuck in that. You get trapped in that of
mhm.
like, well, basically fuck you and fuck the world. Like I should
Yeah.
be able to do whatever I want and feel however I want because growing up as a child, I was silenced or I was neglected or I couldn't make sense of it. And now that I'm an adult,
Yeah.
I have a voice and I have choices that I can make for myself. I can stay out as long as I want. I can do certain
Yeah.
things that, my parents don't want me to do or that I quote unquote shouldn't be doing. Um, and you end up actually feeding the monster that was built by
100%.
that flawed foundation. It's like you start hurting yourself. So I think
Yeah.
back to what I was saying is like the hurt people. I think hurt people also hurt themselves.
I
And
100 it's so true.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
I have so much experience with that too because it's exactly that quote. It's like you hear it so often, but it's so true with situations like this.
mm,
When you're that hurt and you've had like that many traumatic experiences, you feel like you can keep doing those things almost. Like you can
all you
just
know.
keep going. It's all
Yeah,
you know.
yeah,
It's sad, but it's true and it's
yeah,
crazy.
yeah. It's wild.
It's
You're like
wild when you think
you,
about it.
you like think you're finally like I'm on my own, like I'm on my
Hmm.
own and nobody can fuck with me and nobody is like in my bubble and it's just me.
Hmm.
And then it also creates this system where you're able to constantly disappoint yourself, which
Hmm.
fuels that part in
So
you
many
to hurt.
things.
Yeah, and other
Yeah.
parts too. um I wanted to ask too, because it was something that you mentioned is like that guilt and that shame. And I think that
Yeah.
that is a whole other beast that comes with mental health issues in general, but also like it made me think of like the guilt and the shame that you feel um kind of like when you, I guess like right
Like
before,
get started into the
yeah,
whole
like
everything
right before you get started into the healing journey,
healing.
you
Yeah.
go through this period of like, why is it my problem to fix this? Like you
Yeah.
all did this to me. I didn't
Yeah.
choose this. Like this was done upon me. Why am I
100%.
now having to take responsibility for it? So like what was that experience like for you? Or when did you feel like you had any thoughts around that?
Yeah. I think it makes I'm so for everyone listening and watching, I'm a very emotional person. But so if I
We
cry,
welcome
that's
it.
why.
It's
We do. We love the tears.
mm-hmm.
Um, Honestly, I feel like it started when we started sessions.
Mm-hmm.
I was always like open when I got diagnosed, like I was always like semi open about what was going on with me, but I never was like open with myself about like getting help or like getting on this journey of like controlling my emotions more or like understanding why I do some of these things and how I can help myself with doing some of these things. And so I think when I first started that healing journey with you, it was so embarrassing and scary and intimidating because the very beginning of any healing journey, you have to dig up everything. And so I know, like, when we started, we literally went from like the very beginning and we
Yeah.
talked about everything I've been through. And it
Yep.
was terrifying and scary and sad having to relive things and like
Mm-hmm.
finding things that were like locked away that I had forgotten about and like
Mm-hmm.
reliving those moments. But I think once you get past the like spookiness of like getting into your healing journey,
Mm-hmm.
it is so like freeing, like a deep sigh. Like it just feels
Ah,
so good to like
yes.
know that things are happening for the better. Like I know for myself personally, like I've had so many people since I've moved home make comments about how much they feel like I've changed since I left Pennsylvania, not only physically or like dress wise or things like that, but like emotionally. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I still have my moments, but because of all of the like healing that I've done, I have like totally changed my perspective of how I should react to things or how I should be in certain situations, which
Mm-hmm.
is so not like me. And
Mm-hmm.
like I still have my moments and I still am who I am, but I mean, the healing journey, it's scary to start, but once you're on it, it is fucking amazing. Like
Yeah.
it changes your whole life for the better,
Yeah.
I think. And I mean, some parts of it fucking suck, but
Oh yeah. No.
it's amazing.
Yeah. I think that's such a profound statement because it is liberating to
Yeah.
finally take that step and take that leap of faith on yourself and realize that, yes, maybe these things happen to me, but I don't have to live from a place of those conditioned behaviors or that like molded version of me that the world molded me into, and that it was like a hurt and scared and afraid. And um, I don't just mean insecure like about like what you were saying physically or anything like that. I just mean like insecurity of like who you are,
Yeah.
what you want, and like
Yeah.
the way you respond to things, the way you react. So yes, absolutely. I felt the same way with my bipolar diagnosis, especially. And I don't know if I've ever mentioned this to you, but when I was getting diagnosed with bipolar, they also said that I could possibly have BPD. And I look back, and I'm like, yeah, I think at the time, definitely it made sense more,
Yeah.
uh, for a few years following. But I think something that not a lot of people know about BPD is while it is over time, it becomes a chemical imbalance, it is mostly a behavioral disorder.
Oh,
So
100%. Yeah.
it's
It
something,
stems from like everything that it's so different from sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but
no, you're good, you're
it's
good.
so different from bipolar in that sense where
Right.
bipolar right off the bat is a chemical, right? Like, isn't that that's
Yeah,
the biggest difference
it's
is
a,
that
it's,
it's,
yeah, it's more of a biological issue than it is,
yeah.
but
Whereas with
it's triggered by
BPD,
life, right?
right. And BPD is exactly kind of that. Like, they say that like most of the time with BPD, it's because of like your traumatic experiences and what you've gone through when you were younger is
Yeah.
how usually it develops. It's different per person. I know for me personally, like I won't sit here and say I had like a really shitty childhood, but I definitely had an interesting one and it definitely like
Mhm.
had very extreme highs and lows and it
Mm.
definitely is one of the main reasons I'm where I am mentally today. I mean, it doesn't, I mean, the depression is there and the anxiety is there, but the BPD is right in the middle of it all. And it
Mhm.
is exactly what you're saying. Like it's all those events is what created it for me at least. And I mean, it's insane.
Yeah. And that's what it is exactly like you described it. It's like a constant up and down with everything in your external world. Because as you're growing up, like the first 7 to 8 years of your life, everything is being taught to you. Like that's literally your blueprint. Okay.
Yeah.
And so if that first 7 to 8 years blueprint is kind of wishy-washy and all over the place and confusing for you, and like maybe you're not necessarily going hungry every night, which for some people, obviously, that's just your situation. That's a whole other
Yeah.
things. But for your case, as I know, and for my own,
Yeah.
it's like it's not like the world was crashing down constantly.
Yeah.
When the world was when the shit hit the fan, it hit the
It
fan,
did.
and then it hit the fan, and then it hit
Yeah.
the fan, and it was
And
like
then the house
whoa.
exploded.
And then the house exploded, and then the whole world ended, and then yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like it
And
went
then it started over again.
yeah, it was like it was like I feel like for a lot of people who experience BPD, their life was a roller coaster. So there would be super
Yeah.
good times, and then there'd be super awful times, and like not to the normal range, right? Like you were saying at the
Yeah.
beginning, like people with BPD and mental illness in general, mental health issues in general, this is true for a lot of us, but with BPD and specifically because your life has been so unstable in terms of the emotional flexibility,
Hmm.
the emotional understanding, the capacity to nurture and love and hold space for the child that then grows up to have BPD, because it usually doesn't show up until late teenagehood is really when they,
Exactly. Yeah.
or early adult, kind of young adult age. But
Yeah. Like adolescent.
yeah, but the experience is, what else could you expect from somebody who's experiencing these highs and lows, but to then experience life in general as a high and low? You're taking your nervous system in and out of the,
Constantly.
parasympathetic nervous system. So it's like you're training your brain. Our brains, if they are really computers, the way that people describe them, and we're doing this programming this for 7 to 8 years, what else could we expect from ourselves
I
but to
know.
have this really distorted view of reality, because we've been programmed to live that way. We've been programmed to exist and only have ever gotten the chance really to understand life
Yeah.
in that way and in that perspective. So yeah, it really is insane, and it really is, again, it puts you back in your own head of like, what's wrong with me? But really it's like,
Yeah.
no, it's not you. This is
It's just
your
what you've
brain.
been through.
It's just what you've been through. And that's like
Yeah.
that distinction, I think, too, is what really pushes people over to like take that leap of faith.
Yeah.
Is like, okay, I may have BPD, I may have bipolar, I may have depression, I may have anxiety, but that's not all that I am. There's more
Yeah.
to me, and I want to see
Yeah.
more of myself, right?
I think that was really big for me and like my journey was like having that distinction, which I didn't see for a really long time. And it was something that you totally helped me see was like there's two separate things happening right now. Like there's me and like there's who I am and me to my core. And then, like my BPD and all these things are integrated and like I can have those things together, but
Mm.
they are still separate. And like being able to see the distinction and like all of that was so helpful for my journey, I think too. Like I just think about that sometimes. I'm like, I now as a human and like where I'm at, and I'm still on my journey and
Of
all of
course.
that good stuff. And I don't think it'll ever end. But, like I can sit and happily like be like this little combined monster of like both of those things and like be
Yeah.
okay with it
Yeah.
instead of before where it was like constantly a battle, I feel like.
Yeah, there's more integration happening, it sounds like. And
Yeah. Yeah.
it's a really amazing place. I'm so happy to hear that for you. Because that's a really amazing place to be. That's when a lot of the liberating feelings kind of start to come out, I think, too.
Yeah.
Because you're liberating yourself of these old belief systems. Like you're
Yeah.
liberating yourself from the idea that all I'll ever be is someone with BPD. I'll never have
Yeah.
this and I'll never that. And I should be this way and I should be that. But when you free yourself of all that, of all those constraints, and you're like, no, 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 I just don't want to suffocate myself anymore. I just want to
Yeah.
be, I want to live my truth. I want to live in authenticity. And part of that is going through this darkness. It's walking through the fire.
Yeah.
Something really beautiful that was, I love that you mentioned fire, because I think the healing journey, as we know, is not linear. There are times when you need more support than others. There's times when you're
Yeah.
just coasting, right? It's
Yeah.
never
100. I
linear.
mean, there was moments where, and I think I'm so glad I started my healing journey with you compared to like someone else because there was moments where I would be having like to anyone else, probably like a regular day. But to me, it was like, I felt like my world was ending. And it's exactly that. Like, it's not, coasting up. Like, there'd be days I'd be like, okay, Floyd, thanks for such a great session. And then I'm pretty sure I'd send you a text or like something like a few hours later, and be like, my world's falling to pieces
Yeah.
and I'm not gonna be okay. And it
Yeah.
was like, knowing I had such a good support system though is, I think, so important for the healing journey. Like, if I didn't have the support system I did of you and my partner at the time and my friends, like, I would not have been as stable with my healing journey as I was. And don't get me
Sure.
wrong, I still had moments where it's like, Floyd, I'll talk to you in a month.
Yeah.
And then you were like, I'll be here when you're ready. But
Okay.
I think,
You
I
got
think,
it.
yeah, I think like, if I didn't have all of that though, it would have been a lot worse. Like, I think I would have given up on it and just been back to like my old stupid ways.
Yeah, and I think, you know, it's not easy to look at yourself and say, I don't like this part of myself. And I know I'm not the only reason for it, which pisses me off even more, which
Yeah.
makes me want to make everybody else take responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you're not like, that's not the exact thought process. That's just how we
Yeah.
behave is like, well, it's your
Yeah.
fault. You make me this way, you trigger me, and all of that. And it's a lot of pointing fingers. Um, but it takes, I think what you're kind of getting at and what I'm feeling is a lot of self-compassion and like
Yeah.
recognizing that um while I do want to heal, I'm not perfect. I'm never going to be perfect. But if my goal is always to be more of myself, to be happier in life,
Yeah.
in a realistic and practical and very genuine way, then ultimately I'm going to be okay. Even if shit hits the fan, I'm going to be okay. And building that
Yeah.
resiliency is the other word that came to mind. Is that consistency. So, even if you don't feel like going to your therapy appointment, go to your therapy appointment.
Yeah.
Even if
Do
things are
it.
good, even if things are good, take your medicine. Like,
Yeah.
it was something I struggled with as I was like, okay, well, I've been on my medicine for 6 months and I feel great. And the doctor's like, yeah, because you take the
Keep
medicine.
taking it.
So
No, it's so true. You have to like stay consistent, which is something I definitely like learned. Like, even when I was like, we'd have moments where we would have sessions and I'd be like, I'm fine. And you're like, okay, we can still talk. I'm like, okay, la 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 la. And then it would be like, we could have another session. And I feel like I would have moments where I'm like, no, I think I'm great now. And you're like,
yeah.
no, we should have another session. I'm like, okay, fine. And if it's good, because then a week later I'm like down the fucking rabbit hole.
And
And thank
you
God,
never know. Yeah.
that's the worst part about, I think, BBD for me.
Mm. Yeah.
Something I really struggle with is my highs and lows. You never know when they're going to hit, which sucks. Like, so with BBD, they say they have like the 9 core symptoms.
Mm.
Some of the ones I struggle with more are like my abandonment is something I really struggle with. And my self-image I really struggle with, but something I struggle with so much is the manic and the depression. Like,
Yeah.
those highs and lows are so rough and they hit so randomly.
Yep.
And I mean, sure, it's fucking awesome to be manic and to go buy all this shit. And then, you
Ah,
know, a
it's a
few hours
high.
later, I'm like, why the fuck did I just do that? Now I have to return this bullshit I don't need.
Yeah.
Then, like a week later, can't get out of bed, but it's such a struggle, those highs and lows. And they hit so randomly and so it's insane. It's
And that's
insane.
exactly. And that's why you have to have those systems, the support systems
In
in place.
place.
Because
Yeah.
if you think about it again, going back to like your childhood being your foundation, and if that
Yeah.
foundation has cracks, like I view the healing journey and going to therapy and doing meditation and getting acupuncture, like whatever version of healing you do, physical, mental, spiritual, emotional,
Yeah.
it is filling in those cracks with golden, beautiful goo. Okay. And when you can do that, you can then start to build the next layer of that foundation. And I really feel like that next layer comes in, what comes into play for that next layer is community, is
Mm-hmm.
really deep friendships, really deep relationships,
Yeah.
platonic or romantic. Um, and that requires quite a bit of authenticity. And so if you're hiding all these parts of yourself, even unknowingly or knowingly, about your childhood and what you've been through, and it's just like, well, that kind of happens to everybody. It's like, wait.
Yeah.
It happens to a lot of people, but not a lot of
Yeah.
people deal with it. And when people start to deal with it, um, it changes them drastically, and it can change them in a lot of different ways. Like you were saying earlier, when you first started your journey, it was really scary and daunting because you're looking at your whole life going, okay, what's here? And I don't really want to look in that corner, and I don't really want to open that box,
Let
but
me
I
just push
know,
that over there.
yeah. But it's like, then you start to realize over time, you're like, oh, but this is where all of the clues are. This is where
Yeah.
all the gems are. This is where I get the fuel or the components or the materials to make that golden goo to then start
Yeah.
pulling in that
Yeah. The
foundation.
puzzle, the pieces come together.
Yes. And you were mentioning the like big nine, and that's something
Yeah.
that is a really great determinant for people who may feel like they, may be experiencing this. So if you're listening or watching and that's something you want to bring to the attention of a psychiatrist or therapist or even a doctor, you say, hey,
Yeah.
I'm experiencing, five, I think they require it's like five or more.
Yeah.
Um,
I think it is. I think
mhm.
they say it's like five. If you're feeling five or more of these, get
It
checked
could be
out.
that you're experiencing BPD, yeah.
Yeah.
But you mentioned self-image, and that for me is like, oh my God, Sage, I literally couldn't even get dressed in the morning.
Yeah.
I couldn't even pick out up, like I couldn't even put
Yeah.
sweatshirt on because I was like, well, that's not who I am. Like I had to
Yeah.
like physically resemble the inner world, which came out in a lot of really funny. But and then you've mentioned a couple of times too, is like you couldn't even get out of bed some days, and that
Yeah.
you see movies of like mental health shit, and you're like, okay, like, and you're somebody who's like been through it for real. You're like, yeah, that's kind of it. And then like other times you're like, whoa, okay, that's way crazier than it is.
Yeah.
I
But
feel like
sometimes it's so spot on.
there's this no spot on. And so I feel like that getting out of bed thing, like you hear people say that when they're depressed or have anxiety. I think with BPD or bipolar, in particular, those two things, it, and really with BPD, because I've
Yeah.
other clients with it too. And that's just something that's so common is like this
It's so
inability,
common.
yeah, this inability to like even start the day. Because it's like, if I never start
Yeah.
the day, I don't
It doesn't
ever,
matter.
yeah, it's like it never happened, or like I don't have to like disappoint myself, or like I don't have to go out into the world and deal with the real world or whatever it is.
Yeah.
It's like we really start to suffocate ourselves in this world, and then we feel worse and worse and worse. Um,
Yeah. It's crazy. I mean, I think so, and this doesn't sound necessarily like a positive, but it's helped me with it in its own twisted and sick way.
mhm,
Having anxiety is something that's usually actually does help me get out of
mm,
bed because, you know, I can't miss work. God
yeah,
forbid I miss, you know what I
the
mean?
practical stuff starts coming into play.
But
Mhm,
but don't get me wrong. I mean, I've had days where, out in Colorado, when I was working a job I just didn't really care about to begin with, which doesn't help the situation.
right.
I mean, I would wake up and I already knew in those moments, like I can't talk to anyone, I
Mhm,
can't move, I can't drink my water that's sitting over there. I'm not
mhm,
going to work. That's
mhm,
for fucking sure.
mhm,
And my when I was out in Colorado for a really big chunk of that time, I was with my partner and at the time, and he was really good with that understanding of it and
mhm.
trying to get me to do the things I needed to do, but knew, this is something that just has to happen right now. And so I'd be like, I'm not going to work. I'm not doing it. I'd rather quit. They can fire me. And, I mean, he still had to go to work and that was fine. He knew like I have to let this happen. And I mean, doesn't necessarily sound like a positive, but in those moments, like he knew that it was better that I maybe just stay home and don't move and have this like terrible time than go to work and it be even worse.
Right.
Because the thought of me even going to work, what made me so, I mean, and that's another one of the nine of BPD is the suicidal tendencies and the self harm and the thoughts. It
Yeah.
made me want to kill myself, even
Yeah.
thinking about going to work and communicating with real life people.
Right.
And so I think I don't even know where I was going with this, but I mean, it's so big with BPD though, the thought
Yeah.
of like not wanting to do anything, which then stems into another one of the nine, which is disassociation,
Yeah.
which I don't really struggle with that much. I know people with BPD that really, really struggle with that. I personally I've had it here and there. I don't have it like on a daily as I know some people do.
Mhm,
But
mhm.
that's another one that it can stem into just as easily. You're sitting there and you just disassociate and you're gone and it's
Yep.
crazy.
I did that so intensely throughout my entire childhood. There would
Yeah,
be
I think that was me too, because I don't remember most of my childhood.
yeah, and like I now remember because I've done a lot of discovering and uncovering and unraveling in every way, shape, and form. But I realized that my disassociation was like me into like a version of it was intellectualizing my experiences.
Hmm.
Like, well, 2 + 2 = 4, and that's why I feel like this. And then it was like,
Yeah,
and now I'm moving on. And that made it really hard for me to, when I was ready to actually start being, an active participant in my healing experience, my healing journey, it made it really difficult to like dig into things because
yeah,
well, I know why it happened and I know why it made me feel that way and I know why it triggered me. And so many therapists were like, yeah, that's great, but like you gotta feel it.
yeah,
And I was like, oh, okay, okay, okay. So I think that's another daunting part of the experience is like, yeah, you can't just go talk about it or take medication or meditate it away. It's not going to go away. You really have to walk
yeah.
through it. Oh, I remember where it's all stemmed from for us. um, is the fire. You're walking
Oh
through the
yes.
yeah. And so
Hey, we love a good tangent.
no, it's perfect. It's my favorite. Like it's how I think. So when people do
Me
that, I'm like,
too.
perfect. I'm like, you get me, I get you. But yeah, so I was really, really suicidal at one point, and this is when I was in the height of my bipolar escapades, as I call them, and my
Yeah.
anxiety was probably at its worst. And
Yeah.
I wasn't getting out of bed for more than my, morning cigarette and coffee,
Yeah.
basically. My now husband, boyfriend at the time, was taking care of me similar to how you were explaining with your past relationship. And he kind of knew the same thing as like it was better for me to be in this place and to not go out into the world because the world was probably
Yeah.
times more triggering to me.
And too
But
much
and
sometimes.
just too much.
The world's a lot.
Really. Um,
It is.
and so I was really suicidal this one day, and my mom was actually visiting because she knew how bad everything was. And um, this was when I was living in Portland. And I called like a suicide hotline. They forced me to, but like
Yeah.
it was with good reason. They're like, you need to call
Yeah.
somebody like right now. And I was like, okay. So I called somebody and I called the hotline, and this who I now think of as an angel messenger in my life said to me, he was like, you have to walk through the fire until it doesn't hurt anymore.
Oh, that
And
gives me like the chills.
I
I
know
literally just got the chills when you
it
said that
hit
because
me like,
it's, yeah.
it hit me so deep and so hard. And I was just like, holy fuck, you're right. Like,
Yeah.
okay. Because it's acknowledging, I feel like that statement acknowledges the fact that it's painful, that the healing
Yeah.
and going through what you're going through, mental illness of any kind, um, is hell to go through. It
Yeah.
feels like
Seriously.
constantly scorching yourself, burning yourself by walking through the wreckage and the remnants of your childhood and your adolescence and anything else that has traumatized you in life or conditioned you to believe that, um, conditioned your body and your brain to believe that they're unsafe. And then yet at the same time shows that we are resilient and that we are capable and that even if it hurts, it's not always going to hurt that bad. I
Yeah.
think kind of like if you think about like a bruise, it's like when it first happens, it's like you cannot touch it. You don't want to touch it, or any type of wound, physical wound. You don't want to touch it. You don't want to mess with it. Um, maybe like with a gash or something, it's like you have to kind of clean it, and that hurts
Yeah.
too. You have to let it sit. Like you have to let it do its thing. You have to let
Let the
everything off,
scab, let
become a
it,
scab. Yep,
yeah.
and all of that. So I think when we're uncovering bits and pieces of ourselves that are really painful or really hard to uh, manage and have been what is weighing down on us, you have to kind of recognize that it's not always going to hurt that bad. Like each time you
Yeah.
go back to it, it's going to be easier and easier and
Yeah.
easier. And so again, like having the consistency of doing the things that help you the most, whatever that may be, small, big, little, um, whether it's going to therapy or just holding a crystal at night, like it's
Yeah.
just whatever it is that resonates with you that makes you feel better about what you're going through, that makes you feel resilient, that makes you remember that you are capable, that you are powerful, that you have it in you to do this, follow that shit and don't
I was
ever,
just about to say that. Yeah.
ever let it
And
go.
I think also like what you were just saying, like, how do I phrase this? Like you were saying, it'll, if you keep going back to it, I mean, it's all about just that consistency because without that, you're like, if you're not going to be consistent with cleaning a wound, it's going to get infected
Yeah.
and it's just going to get worse.
Right.
If you stay consistent with like making sure that this is going to heal, it's going to heal. I mean, it could open up again and that's okay. Let
Yep.
it open up again, start fresh. That's
But you're going to know
fine.
how to heal it even better next
But
time.
you're going to know how to do it and you're going
Right.
to you're going to do it 10 times better than you did it the last time.
Yep.
And I
Yep.
think that's like the biggest thing with like any healing journey or anything like that is it's okay if it happens again. Like for me, I'm never going to be done with my BPD, is the way I look at it. It's always
Yeah.
going to be a part of me, whether it's controlling me or not. Like, it's okay. It's just a matter of how you handle it and how you let it heal and let it do its thing.
Yeah, because I think too, like something that's come out of my healing journey is like sort of this like higher up spiritual version of it, of like, okay,
Yeah.
this is just the for me, I'm like, okay, this is the life that I've chosen. I chose
Yeah.
to, like, for me, this is my belief system. Is like, I've chosen to come here and I've chosen to be who I am. And I've chosen to have certain experiences so that I can become who I am and who
Yeah.
I want to be, not only for the people around me, but for my own soul's expansion. And that's going to require strife and suffering and conflict. Should it have to be to the extent that it has been? No, it's still unfair. It's not that
Yeah.
saying any of the things that have happened to me or anybody or you are okay and that we should just
Yeah.
allow things to happen to us. But in healing, I have found a lot of meaning within the experiences that I've had, and that there's so many lessons um, and so much it's created my sense of self in a way
Yeah.
of like my worthiness of like, yeah, I fucking deserved way better than that. I should not have been treated like that way. I should not have been hurt that way. And now, instead of continuing the pain and continuing the hurt and continuing to feed into that part of myself that got so hurt and so abandoned, I'm nurturing that part of myself. I'm nourishing that part of myself. I'm loving that part of myself, compassionately holding space for that, those many variations of myself, right? And that's where we start to integrate. Brings us back to that point where you are like, oh, okay, I can see how I was thinking that way and why I was thinking that way and the state of
Yeah.
mind I was in. And now I can see it from this third person perspective because I have these other skills
Yeah.
that have allowed me
It's
to,
so what you just said, third person.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
it's you're seriously like looking in on all of this, like a
yeah.
bystander almost sometimes. It's crazy.
Yes. And being able to view it like that, where you're not disconnected, you're not necessarily completely 100% objective, but you are objective enough to like view it safely without it like
Hmm.
scorching you.
Yeah.
Um, that's a really powerful and important skill that you gain in the healing journey. And I think so many people hear that word of like the healing journey, and I think to some people it's like a little cringe, which is something I mentioned to you before the
Yeah.
pod.
And it
And
can be. And
it
that's
totally
it's whatever. It can
It
be.
totally
It's
can be, but I
true.
I think it's supposed to be kind of, because that
Yeah.
like reinitiates the silliness of life and you're like, okay,
Yeah.
things are like serious and like I have to do all this shit. It's also like, how fucking funny is it that I got so upset that my fucking toe got stuck? You know what I mean? Like
Literally.
you get to do that
Literally.
later. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Um,
I'm just like looking back and I'm like, yeah, that's definitely happened to me. I've literally been like so pissed at the fucking world
oh my
because
God.
I stubbed my toe or like something happened that was no one's fault but my own.
And
It's
literally
like,
just
fuck
like,
you.
yeah, just like this is the worst thing that could ever happen. And how dare you and how dare I? And like it's like gets shit hits the fan with BPD. When shit hits the fan, like you said, the house starts on fire and the house starts
Yeah.
falling down and everybody else, there's an earthquake, now there's a tornado,
Yeah.
and you're just like, wait, what even happened at the end of it?
Yeah. I think that's
You,
something I actually really struggle with, or,
yeah,
I'm like learning to deal with. I don't want to say struggle with, I'm learning, but
yeah,
that's something I've always in the past really struggled with, especially when you have a partner.
hmm
Your partner is your sounding board, your partner is who you're with and you spend all your time with. But sometimes that can be a negative because I know with my previous partner, again, he was so great with my BPD. He was so willing to learn and willing to be there
yeah,
and willing to take my bullshit because another one of the nine is like extreme anger. And that is one that is like the top of my list. Like I really struggle with my anger issues.
yes,
And I'm definitely the past year, like really, really been working on them. And I do think they've definitely like hit a new low in a good way. Like they're definitely not as extreme as they used to be. But,
beautiful.
I would have a moment where something would happen that I 100% did on my own and the world would explode and my partner would be right there and it was his fault.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a similar embarrassment where it was I would freak out on him. I usually wouldn't even remember what I was saying. I would usually say the most terrible things. He would
Mm-hmm.
sit there and take it, which is not okay. And I feel terrible now. And even then afterwards, I would be so mad at him and I would hate him, but I would be so embarrassed about what I did.
Yeah,
And I would sit there and he'd be like, okay, like, let's think about it. I'm like, no, I don't want to fucking talk about it. I didn't want to talk about it because I didn't know what I even said. And I
yeah,
didn't want to know what I said because I was so embarrassed.
yeah.
But it's I forget how I even started talking about this again because I always do this. But it would happen and you don't even realize what you're doing until you've done it. And then you feel this like shame of like,
Yes.
oh, I treated someone this way. It wasn't even their fault. I stubbed my toe. And look where we're at now. We're fighting. We're in different rooms because I stubbed my toe and it was his fault.
Yeah.
Or little things like that. I think that's something I've really been working on, which is like really great to like see that difference now though.
hmm hmm
It makes you again feel like, oh, I
Yeah.
treat so many people badly, but
Mhm.
I know when I'm doing it. I can't help it. It's like you get taken over. I call it redding out. Like I
So
don't remember it.
that's what
Yeah.
I was gonna say is I remember you described that experience as reading out, and it's like
Yeah.
you're literally, and I will share with you an experience that I had of my worst version of that, um because it's actually quite funny to me now. But the throwing tantrums, it's really
Yeah.
it's adult tantrums, and
Yeah.
I've recognized in myself, and I'm sure you can relate, is this child in you where you just needed things to go better, you needed things to go
Yeah.
right, you needed things
And
to
like the
go
perfectly. Like it had to be
literally.
perfect. That's something
You,
I still struggle with. Like the
yeah,
perfectionism in me. Like I can't trust anyone else to do it because I have to do it. It
right.
has to be perfect.
And how could you trust anybody when the two
Yeah.
that are supposed to be the most trusting people in your lives, your parents, were not that trustworthy? So
Yeah.
no a chance for you in a sense. There always is a chance, but at the
Yeah.
time,
No, I
this
get it.
time,
Yeah.
there wasn't really much of a chance for you to develop that skill
Mhm.
to rely on others. And so when you do rely on others, also in another instance of tantrums, when you did finally
Yeah.
decide, okay, I'm gonna give a little bit of room for you to do the dishes on time, right? And then the dishes
Right.
don't get done on time, and you're like, what the fuck? Like, you don't care about me, and you just think everything I asked for is too
Yeah.
much, and blah blah blah, and all of that. And it's throwing tantrums, and it's that you now are an adult who has the ability to have a voice, to say whatever you want without without any technical parent to child
Yeah.
consequences. And so even if you feel the guilt and the shame um after the event happened, excuse me, in the moment, it's like nothing could stop you from doing
Uh,
what you're doing. and
you
and
are a boulder going down that hill no matter what.
and it feels almost not good that you're doing it, but it feels like a relief to be able to do it. And it's so
Because it is one almost.
because
If
it
you're
is, and
getting
it's
it all out, but just not in the
yes,
right way.
right, not in the right way. And it's you're pulling from sources that are so deep and
Mhm.
so like all over the place that when you then try to explain it to your partner afterwards or whatever, you're like, what even just happened, So
Yeah.
I'll share with you a story of when I really lost it, this is again when I was living in Portland for the worst time in my life. Living in Portland was fantastic, but I
Yeah.
personally hated it so much and it was just awful. And I cannot even tell you to this day, my husband can't tell me either. He doesn't remember. I was so worked up, so worked up. I mean, crying, sobbing, hyperventilating
Yeah.
about something. I think something just went wrong in the day.
Yeah.
Maybe we were out of weed. I don't know. We were very poor and like had, ciggies and weed and Starbucks. Like that was our,
Yeah.
that was like safety.
The Fab Three.
Yeah, that's how we like vibed out. That's how we like made it through the day. Um, Probably one of the three was off or whatever, or money or
Yeah.
a little tiff. And I literally ran into, I have a scar on my forehead right here. Literally ran into a door full force, split my head, just ran into a door, like straight ran into, and like, I'm like,
That's crazy.
I know, it's super crazy. I just ran straight.
No, but I mean, like, that's wild.
It's like, how do you get to that point? And then like all of a sudden I looked down and I kind of snapped out of things, right? Like I looked
Yeah.
at like blood dripping
What
off.
just happened?
And I was like, wait, what?
Yeah. Yeah, it's how it gets though. I mean, like, it's so
What?
true when it's like called running out, I feel like, because it's like when you're drunk and you're blacking out, except
Yeah.
you're just so angry that you have no control. I mean, it happens to me all the time still. I get so
Yeah.
angry I don't remember, but
Yeah.
it's just like that. You don't when you're in those moments of like one little thing goes wrong and your world is ending, you don't care what happens to your surroundings or
Oh,
yourself for that matter. Running into that door probably felt like the right thing to do at the time. And then you look back and you're like, why the fuck did I just run into a fuck? Like, why was where was the connection to tell me that was what I was supposed to do? But when you're in those moments, you're like,
yes.
fucking run into the door.
Yeah, I'm
Right.
running around. And that's the thing is like your amygdala takes over the part of your brain that deals with all your emotions and it's all
Yeah.
connected to just your limbic system, I believe is what it's called, is just attached to your emotions and your memories. And so if something triggers you when you're somebody who has these wounds, these really core, deep, fundamental wounds, fundamental cracks in your foundation, and then something triggers that, even if you aren't aware of that trigger, um the amygdala will like literally take over and be like, no, 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 we're not going to use reason right now, we're not going to use things,
Yeah.
we need to keep ourselves safe, we need to get this emotion out, we need to
Yeah.
feel everything that we're feeling right now, because if we don't, it's going to be 10 times crazier, 10 times worse. So it's like you feel like you have to let the floodgates
Hmm.
open, because if you don't, it's like it's going to suffocate you and suppress you to a place of like
Yeah.
probably suicidal ideation, or like to a place where
Don't want to feel and you don't feel.
yeah, and then you just shut
Yeah.
down. And so it's like either
Yeah.
I'm gonna like red out and I'm gonna tantrum, or I'm gonna like not even be a person and just like be a
Yeah.
stack of
A
potatoes.
body. Literally. Yeah. It's so true though. And I've definitely been in a place where I've done both. Like
Mhm, same. Yeah.
I've had such crazy feelings that it was like, oh, okay. I can't even get to a point of like letting those floodgates open.
Hmm.
And it was so much. I was like, okay, I'm just gonna go the other way, which 9 times out of 10 was even worse than whatever I might have said to someone, but it was too late at that point and I was already like literally a shell of a human,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah. I think it's so interesting too, people who experience like parents that are not stable people,
Yeah.
it's emotionally, physically, uh mentally or financially, spiritually,
Yeah.
it really does something to you. And
Oh yeah.
it totally changes the trajectory. Why do I try to use big words at night? I'm so
I
tired
can't use
and
them.
like dead. But it changes the trajectory of your entire being. And
Yeah.
like the intellectual side of me and the spiritual side of me says like, well, these things happen so that we can, progress, whatever, as
Yeah.
people and souls. But then the other part of me is like, damn, if my mom just like took 2 seconds to do XYZ, maybe things would have been a little fucking better for me. Thanks.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think too, in the healing journey, you learn to have compassion for the people who hurt you, which
I was just about to say that.
I know that's a really hard thing for people to hear. And I'm not saying that you need to like forgive someone if they, took away your whole family or something like that.
Yeah. But it's true. I mean,
Yeah.
that's something that even I think we had talked about in a session one time was like with my biological father, like
Hmm.
like to be blunt, like we never had a good relationship. And when we did, I think that it was kind of like all in my head of wanting to have like such a good relationship with him.
The
And
idealization of him, yeah.
the oh, it's insane. And I think for so long, like the past like 4 or 5 years, I would go back and forth of like wanting to talk to him or like just fucking hating his guts. And I think something that I really came to an understanding with you was like, I don't have to like hold this hatred for him.
Mhm.
Like I can not sympathize, but I can understand some of his actions and I don't have to say they're good actions. I can still understand that they were not correct actions, but I can
Or
see them
excuse
and I can
them. Yeah.
like I can let it go and I can say, okay, you know what? Instead of like using what he's done to like fuel more hatred for him and like having this hatred in me that's just festering,
Hmm.
just let it go because it's at the end of and it's easier said than done.
Of course.
But it's one thing that I definitely like and with a lot of other family members as well that I've gone through when like we've had our sessions, it's like
Mhm.
seeing the multiple sides and like understanding that like you can have your feelings and you can feel this way, but being able to like just kind of hold your own emotions and be like, I don't know, just seeing it all. I don't know how
Yeah.
am I wording that right? Like, does
No,
that make sense?
I can tell what you're getting at. It's like you have to compartmentalize what is and isn't yours. And
Yeah.
you have to recognize that you can't ever take accountability for what these people did. And
Yes. Like
in
you have to let
hoping,
it go because like it was
yeah,
done to you and you
yeah,
had that's something that like I've always struggled with is like all these things that I went through. It's like I had no control over any of that shit. And yeah, it was like on them, but you know what? Like that fucking sucked. Yeah, but like it's done with and
but here I
I
am now.
can
Like I get this
yeah, and like I'm
now.
so different and like I know now. Like I think this is something you and I've always been so like on the same page about is like I know now how I want to be a parent and I know like what
Right.
I'm going to do and like how I'll do things differently and like all these things. Like, let me, instead of holding hatred for the things that were done to me, let me take this, twist it around and like make it into something better for like my future and like my future kids if that happens. Like, know now and like learn from these shitty fucking experiences. Like, okay,
Yes.
not gonna do this, not gonna do that, not gonna do this.
Yeah.
Like it's almost like in a sick and twisted way. I'm like, thanks for fucking being so terrible sometimes. Cause now I know to never fucking do that.
Hey, some people are in this world at times to show us bad examples.
Yeah, it's
And
so
sometimes
true.
and sometimes that is like a smidgen little snippet of their
And
life. It
sometimes
turns
it's
out
like
to,
6 years.
yeah, the whole time. But I think letting go, this idea of letting go, and even the word of forgiveness is really difficult for people, but letting go is leaving the past to make a future. You cannot
Yeah,
live in your traumas and dramas and experiences and expect your life to move forward. You
yeah,
cannot live and exist and move from this conditioned and hurt place and expect
yeah,
life to resemble something entirely different, even if you
yeah,
want it to.
yeah. And I mean, it's hard. It's not, I think that's
So
honestly
hard.
the hardest. And I'm still not even fully like, if it's like a loading bar, I'm probably like 25, 50% through it.
Yeah.
Like, forgiveness is really fucking hard. And
Yeah.
like, take your time with it because you can forgive people whenever you need to, but
Yeah.
like, do it for you. I think is like, I think that's big for me. It's like, I did it for me because I didn't want that hatred in me for someone that, to be very blunt, like, doesn't mean that much to my life.
Mhm, mhm.
Like, why am I holding hatred for someone who is not in my life on a daily basis when I could fill that where that hatred is with love for someone who is there on a daily basis or like
Right. Or for
a
yourself.
hobby or something or for myself. Yeah.
Yeah.
Take that spot that you're holding anger for someone who really doesn't fucking matter and give it to yourself.
what I hear you getting at in that last little bit is like being able to hold space for other people's journeys and the fact that they have made mistakes that have affected us so greatly,
Yeah.
while so being to, being like courteous to ourselves first, right? Because a lot of the times I feel like when we grow up with parents who have a lot going on in themselves and like aren't really capable yet of
Holding all of it.
holding all of it exactly,
Yeah.
and it kind of gets put on us. It's like we get put in this like, well, like enmeshment can happen, and then like we become the parent, and then we're like
Yeah.
playing, and then we're also trying to like, we're like, okay, like what do we do? And then like our own the person or the people that are supposed to act as our stability and as our security and our sense of safety, not only physically but emotionally, mentally, and spiritually as well, it's all shaky. And so it's like we grow from a place that's shaky. And then later on in life, when we say now take on the challenge of healing and healing this aspect of ourselves, we still take on, because we're programmed into us, we still take on this role of like, well, they could have this, and well, they've been going through that, and like we allow for too much compassion on their side without letting it kind of come onto our side and recognizing, oh,
Yeah.
this is our time to like, this is my time to focus on
Yeah.
myself and my experience of that person.
I think
um
it's almost like we want to find excuses for them to like help them, but
totally.
it's like it's not worth finding those excuses
Right.
for them because they're already there. The excuses are there.
Sure.
They're set in stone, but
Sure.
we you know what I mean?
And it's like, just because we can look at our parents and say, well, this is why you acted this way, because your mom was this way and your dad was this way,
Mm.
and you had this trauma happen in your life. So you were probably not able to, whatever. Like, no matter how much you intellectualize your experience in life, you're still going to have to feel it. You're still going to have to go through the emotion of it and the way that it has conditioned you to think about yourself, to think about other
Yeah.
people. And you have to start to take accountability for who you are now and become more than this conditioning, more than the traumas, which requires a ass load of like letting go. And so like letting go of the responsibility of other people need.
I
And
think
also,
that was so hard for me. Like
yeah.
for so long. I mean, I'm still even this way, like being in that role of feeling like I had to be mom to my own mom. Like I still struggle with that. And I've definitely like through my journey have let go of so much of that, just being like, she's gonna do her own thing. And I
Yeah.
can't control her actions because she is an
Yeah.
adult just as much as I am now an adult. But
Yeah.
there's still times even where I find myself wanting to be like, oh, let me try and stop whatever this might be, or let me try and
Mhm.
control this situation. And then I have to remind myself, like, there's no controlling this, and that's okay. And I
Mhm.
just have to kind of like let go and let her do. Let
Mhm.
go and let it be.
Yeah. And it's like
And that's hard.
it's so hard. And we want our parents to be our parents. We want them to show up
Mhm.
for us. We want them to not neglect us. We want to feel their love. And so when we can see little like like momentary glimpses of that love, or like momentary glimpses of like them showing their love through action or behavior, it's like we attach to it so hard, and
Yeah,
then like, but this is who they really are, and this is what they're capable of, and I know that they can do it, and I know it could be better, and I know if I just said this or did that. And it's like, yeah, maybe, but also maybe not. And I think um kind of tying it back to forgiveness is like acceptance and forgiveness go hand in hand.
for
Like,
sure.
you have to accept that this person is probably never going to be what you totally need or totally want in your life,
Yeah.
but it's up to you to decide, okay, how much am I going to allow them into my life at this time? And how much how much of their love is really going to fulfill this, for lack of a better term, void in me that was created
Yeah.
up. Like, I can't rely on them, so who can I rely on? Myself. And then that
And
kind
how
of,
much of like yourself do you want to give too? Because
right.
letting someone into that space, you have to be willing to give some of yourself to open up.
Yeah.
And that in itself is so hard to do. Like to open those gates, to be willing, like that in itself, I think, is like such a feat to even
And,
get to a point where you're willing to.
and I was gonna say, in that you don't get to that point for quite a while.
Yeah.
Like my husband, he's like experienced a lot with his family, and um, so much of it was similar to our story of just emotional neglect and like not just they were not there for him the way that he needed growing up and even into, young adulthood. And it caused such fluctuation in his belief in himself and his self-esteem and his ability to make decisions for himself. Because a lot of the time they were making certain decisions for him and telling him what he was doing was wrong or bad or not, just different. And
Yeah.
his different was not good. Um,
Yeah.
and so he's had to accept and forgive that, maybe they didn't know how to love him properly. Maybe they didn't know how to parent him properly, but it is up to him now to set the appropriate boundaries, to do the healing work on himself so that he can move forward with his life and be the person he's truly meant to be, which is not somebody that's been conditioned by all this shit. Like that's the human like power, right? Like I always, and I'm sure you'll feel this way too, is like I always try to initiate that thought process in people, like in clients and just my friends and just people, myself, is like humans are so fucking resilient. And it's like
Yeah.
weird and creepy sometimes because you're just like, how did I get through that? But like I did,
Yeah. It's
Um,
so crazy that it's so true too. Like you like get through something and you're like, what the fuck? How did
yeah,
I survive that? But you did.
yeah,
Like I think about that all the time. Like I look back on like past experiences that I've had and I'm just like I'm shocked at
yeah,
seeing a 13-year-old girl, a 14-year-old girl like going through what she went through and like here I am now.
yeah,
And like even when I tell some like people some of the stories of my past and
yeah,
they think like, wow, how old were you? And I'm like, oh, I was a freshman in high school. Who goes
yeah,
through that kind of stuff? But here I am because
yeah.
of resilience. Like it's crazy.
Yeah. And it's a choice to be resilient. I don't think all the time we can be like our highest self and existing from like our highest self at all times and making all the right decisions. That's not what humans do either. But in our resilience, like in choosing yourself, you're choosing more than what you've experienced. You're choosing to step into that place of, wow, this is fucked up and this is not okay that this is happening to me. I'm not going to let this define me as a person. Um, and with BPD, especially, I think that mindset, and I think we touched on this earlier too, is remembering that you are not BPD. You are not
Yeah.
bipolar. That is an aspect of you that needs
It's
nurturing
not
and
who you, it
healing.
doesn't encompass you.
Yeah, it's not all that you are. And so you brought up your younger self, and I always like to ask this question to people just in general. Not all the time. Some people aren't like in a place to answer this question, but I feel like you are. What would you say to that version of yourself now? Like if that version of you came to you in the now times asking for your, loving compassion and advice, like what would you say to that part of yourself?
Oh, that gives me like the chills.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, oh
Integration,
totally. I
baby.
just had the total chills. Um, I mean, I think at first I think I would just give them a hug because I
Hmm.
think they need it. She
Yeah.
totally needed hugs and
Yeah.
she got them, but I don't think she got what she needed from those hugs. And then I think, which is so corny because I feel like it's what everyone says, but like, just get through it. Like,
Yeah.
seriously, I think that is like my core thing. I would tell like little me, like, just get through it. Because once you get through it, I mean, and don't get me wrong, I'm still going through it on like a
Sure.
daily, monthly,
Sure.
week, like anything. But get through what you're going through, just get to the other side
Yeah.
because you'll have your little break and you'll be able to just be
Hmm.
and it'll be okay in those moments that you have. And even in the shit moments, it sucks, but just get through it. It's
Yeah.
so stupid. And it's what everyone says.
No,
But
but
when you get through it, it's so true. Like
I
just push through.
I think it's the core of that is human resiliency, of course, and reminding yourself, like I am capable of getting through this, and that like even if this time is really, really hard, there's going to be a lot of good times ahead of you. So like
Yeah.
lose hope for those times. And I think when we're in the throes of our painful experiences, whether that's healing from them, doing the deep inner work, or actually being in the times, right?
Yeah.
Um, we do have to remind ourselves of our strength, and we do have to remind ourselves that we're capable. And again, that despite this, this is not all that we are. This is not the only thing we're ever going to experience. Um, pain is, my daughter has a book. She has like, we have a lot of emotion books, and I love them. They're all so great, and they're so like relevant to adults. Like I think adults should read them. But one of the books talks about like how sadness is like rain, and your tears are like the rain falling from the clouds, and like it feels overwhelming, but there's always, and it's corny as hell too, but it's like there's always sunshine after a rainbow, and sometimes there's even a rainbow. So, or sunshine after raining.
Yeah. But
Gosh,
it's true. I
it's
mean,
so
it's
true.
totally true. Like, even, and I feel like even when I'm in super dark throes of like in my highs or my lows, that you can't see
Mhm.
that far ahead. I mean, even
Um,
now, there's moments where I
oh
cannot
no,
see
yeah.
past the day I'm in. And it's like,
The
what can I do
second.
right? Yeah. It's like, what can I do right now? Okay, I'm just gonna go to bed because I don't feel like I can do anything else. And I don't feel like I
Yes.
want to do anything else. I don't want to keep pushing forward. Let me go to bed.
Yep.
But I think because I'm in a place right now where I'm like, okay, just wait it out. Just try and get to that next day because there could be a rainbow. I could wake up and feel so much better. And
Right.
I think that's also a big struggle with BPD is you never know when it's going to stop or when it's going to go. But it can be like that. Like I'll wake up after a nap and I'll feel great.
Mhm.
Or I'll feel great before I go down to sleep. And then when I wake up in the morning, I feel so
Different.
low.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
never know. But I think reminding myself that I've already been through so much and like I just need to keep pushing forward because I know that there's more for me is
Yes.
like what keeps me going.
Yes. That's so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that part of yourself with us. It's so special because we don't often touch like, and I literally mean like go inside ourselves and like touch that wound and palpate, the wound, and
Yeah.
like feel that inner child or whatever age it may be, because it's
Yeah.
for both of us, just knowing our
Yeah.
stories, there's multiple
Yeah.
ages, right?
Yeah.
But I think that's really beautiful what you said, and is definitely a testament to your resiliency. And it led me to the thought of, well, what you said about what can I do right now led me to the thought of sometimes it is about just in this moment, I am struggling really hard. How can I help myself? What do I need right now more than anything? And what do I want right now? I want to feel differently. Okay. I need to feel differently. How am I going to give myself that? And that's where like building the skill set comes into play. That's where having a toolkit of not only self-care, but mind shifting methods and like different tactics that actually bring your nervous system out of, the parasympathetic fight or flight kind of mentality.
Yeah.
There's so many resources out there. And so I wanted to ask you, what sort of resources have you utilized, or what sort of resources would you suggest to people who may be struggling with some of these symptoms like BPD, or just mental health issues in general?
Yeah. I actually am going to pull it up because I wrote down some pages. So something for me, which speaks to my age in the worst way, but like I'm on my phone all the time. It's just so
All
bad to
right.
get out there. Like I'm like, so I don't want to be telling people this, but it's true. I'm on
I
my
think
phone
most of us are.
constantly.
Yeah, I think
It's
most of
so
us
bad. I'm
are.
like getting red even saying it out loud, but it's true. I'm on my phone all the time. And I
Mhm.
think something for me when I first got diagnosed, I was instantly like, okay, I want to find pages on Instagram. Like, I need to find little
Yeah,
pages, whether it be a page of resources or a page of like dark humor, because, like, for me personally, dark humor like really resonates with me, which isn't for everyone. And
totally.
it's totally like not for everyone. But for me, like, I know that I love it. And it makes me feel better to know that, like, I think a lot of the pages I followed, which I definitely want to shout them out on here because I love them, that they have all been so great for me, again, whether they're for healing tools or like just knowing that there's other people out there that feel that same feeling as me sometimes,
Yes.
and having that connection even though it's over a photo, seeing that that photo of that like stupid kind of sad post like has so many likes. I'm like, okay, 10,000 people feel this same like reaction enough
Totally.
to like this post.
Yeah.
But I a bunch on Instagram. I mean, there's one that's called Learn BPD, one that's BPD relatable, and then Back from the Borderline. I mean, those three have all been like super, super great for me. There's
Yes.
times I like will go on Instagram just to look at their pages to just like feel seen,
Hmm.
which like saying that out loud too is like for me, that's so hard. Like
Yeah.
feeling seen by others, like
Yes.
knowing that other people feel this way is like so comforting. And even now, like I feel it in my chest. Like it just feels so good knowing, which sounds terrible because you don't want other people to feel this way. Like I don't want other people to feel
Sure.
the feelings I have sometimes, but to
Of
know
course.
that I'm not alone in those feelings, it's
Right.
like, oh man, like does that fucking relieve me sometimes that
It
I'm not
totally.
so crazy that
Yes.
I'm
You're
not
not.
alone in this.
Yeah, you're not alone in this and you're not an outlier. There are so many people who manage BPD and do it well. And I think the more we can find connection anywhere, you can find connection and you can make yourself feel normalized so long as it's obviously like healthy. I think
Yeah.
I think for a lot of people with who are like BPD, slightly intellectual, existential, which comes with the territory, you like that dark humor is
Yeah,
like
I mean it
that like
works for me.
it's there's something about it and you're just like this makes so much sense. Yes.
Yeah. Like
um
even
I
last night
totally
I
get
was on Instagram and you and I had just got done texting and I was like scrolling on Instagram and I was like, "Ah, that one's good. Oh,
it.
that one's a little spooky, but it made me laugh." And it was
Mhm.
like, it feels good to just know that there's other people in the world that feel that same and you can connect with them with it. And I've followed and unfollowed and found the pages that are right for me. And I think that's important. But I think also, like, which this is something that I'm working through right now, just from moving home and like figuring out my path and figuring out what I need. But I've been in and out of therapy since I was like 10 or 11, I think maybe even a little bit younger than that. And I think finding the right therapist is like so important. I've found them, I've lost them.
Oh yeah.
I've gone through really shitty ones that I fucking hate that I would never go back to. And like, and it's all about picking. And you know, if you don't like the first one, don't go back.
Yes.
Doesn't matter. Fuck them.
Yeah.
Go to the next
Yeah.
one.
And
Like,
I don't think so many of us when we're in the shit and we're really struggling, we really need that kind of support at like a very professional level, which I encourage every single human being, whether you've been through severe trauma or not, because
to
guess
just
what?
go.
You've been through conditioning. So yeah. So go, even if it's
Yeah.
once, but like I think
Just
you're
try
so right.
it.
I think you're so right in saying like use your voice. Like you do not have to take medication just because people are telling you you should.
Yeah.
You do not have to stay with this doctor or stay with this therapist or stay with this psychiatrist because it's the first one you found and you're in a desperate time.
Yeah.
Maybe go to them for as long as you get stabilized on the
Feel.
medication or as long as it feels authentic, right? And so much of our healing journey has to be authentic. We have to be active participants in the experience of finding the things that make us feel better, finding those, creating that toolbox of skills and
Yeah.
coping mechanisms because coping mechanisms, that even that wordage gets a little fucky for me for like a whole other tangent reason. But I mean it as in like just because you think you're coping doesn't mean you're necessarily coping in a way that's healing you, if that makes sense.
It
There,
totally does. It makes
yeah,
so much sense.
yeah. Like, there are moments where you're like, okay, I just need to go to sleep, like you said. That's really valid and totally helpful in a lot of situations.
But
But doing that every time you feel
isn't
strong,
gonna, yeah.
that's
It's
not
not helping you, it's just hindering you,
right.
which
Right.
which
So
is
there,
so, so valid to bring up because
yeah,
it's so true.
yeah,
You can have coping mechanisms, but you don't like some of them are not going to always be that beneficial. Like it's not one that you want to crutch on per se.
yeah.
Find the ones that actually benefit you, I think is super important. I also think something that you brought up that I think is super important to touch on too quickly is like medication. Like
Mm-hmm.
I think it's so important to like find what's right for you, whether that to be on medication or not. My personal experience, like I was on it, I was off it, did
Mm-hmm.
all of the other things, and like I'm in a space right now where I've been for a while, where I just don't want to be on them because I want to like feel my feelings and all these
Right.
things.
Right.
That's
Totally
not
valid.
to say that people should necessarily follow my footsteps because it's all that's like it's specific for each person, and I think that's super important for people to know because I
Yes.
feel like a lot of times they'll hear someone be like, oh well, I'm not on medication for my PPD and I'm fine. I'm not fucking fine. I'm on it because I know that this is what works for me.
Mhm.
That's not to say if a new medication were to come out that I wouldn't potentially try it. I'm
Sure.
always open for anything.
Sure.
I think it's like about figuring out like what you need, how you need it, what's the best way to get it. Like maybe medication is the perfect space for you depending on what your needs are. And I think a lot of people like shy away from that because they hear about being on medication and they're like,
Yes.
oh, no, don't want it. Don't
Mm-hmm.
want to be on medication. It might be like the last thing, the perfect little kernel to like put you all together. And
Fully.
people, I think, sometimes like pull away from
Fully.
that.
Yes. And it's a part of it, I think, has to do with the fact that there's so much like nowadays people are becoming like unreasonably woke is like the only way I
Yeah.
can think about it. Like, medication, it just fucks with your whole body. And it's like, yeah, but my body is also fucking with me. So
Yeah, that's like the perfect way to put it. It's like, yeah, it might fuck with my body, but my body's already being fucked with. So
yeah,
like,
like I can continue to do other things that like supplement myself as like naturally
yeah,
as possible because you know me, I'm all about that. Like I've
yeah,
done so much holistic healing and alternative healing and Eastern medicines
yeah,
as much as I have done the traditional Western medication,
yeah.
You know, American psychiatric, like that whole thing.
You honestly are, you could be like the poster child for like that balance. Like you've done it all. Like you, but it's
And
true. Like I've seen you, like
yeah,
you've hit them all. And I think it's so like beautiful to see that you
no,
can combine both of them and
yes.
like
I think
figure
that's
out, it's again like figuring out your balance. And for
yes.
you, like you know your balance.
And I think that's why I'm doing what I'm doing, why I'm studying what I'm studying,
Yeah.
and it just like I'm like, hello, like what's not being said here is being said here,
Yeah.
and what's not being said here is being said here. So why don't we, you know,
Merch.
combine forces, right? And so, um, thank you for saying that. I really appreciate it because that is something that like it just seems so like rational and logical. But I love what you're saying about, you know, this authenticity piece of healing and that another's path is not your path, that even if something
Yeah.
worked for somebody else, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to work for you. It also doesn't mean that it's
Oh
not going to
yeah.
work for you,
Yeah.
but like their
You just need to
combination,
figure it out
exactly.
because yeah.
Yes. Their
Sorry,
combination,
I cut you off.
you're all good. Their combination of like self-care and their boundaries and their treatment plans and you know, their skills that they learn, their coping mechanisms, even the different types of therapy that they have done. It is so unique to that individual. And while other individuals can be gigantic resources with a plethora of, you know, opportunity for you, you can look at what they've done and pick and kind of choose and try stuff. That's great. Instagram's is a great place for that because there is so much information out there. Even Pinterest, I found amazing journal
Oh
prompts
yeah.
for. Um, but remaining authentic on your healing journey and remaining true to yourself and being like, okay, I've meditated 5 times and I really don't like it. In a year from now, you might meditate again for the first time and really like it. Your energy and your heart space and whatever it is, it might not be the right timing. The alignment might not be there for this one specific thing, but there's probably alignment for all these other things that are
Yeah.
just waiting for you to come, you know, snag them and utilize.
Yeah.
Right. So give yourself the chance to find the things that help you. Do not give up before you have started. You know, that's like telling a baby, like, why aren't you walking? You know, it's like, I don't know how to walk. Like most people are not well versed in the healing language, right? They're not well
Yeah.
versed in the healing journey because it's not really something we talk about very often in society. It's definitely becoming more of a conversation, but I think there's still so many stigmas and misconceptions and um just a lot of misinformation, I would say too. And I think with
So much.
BPD, yeah, I think with BPD, that's and the idea of medication and even the idea of going to therapy for some people is like obscure or just taboo
And
or
scary
you know,
too. I think people
really.
get so scared of it, especially I think with BPD because,
Yes.
you know, I mean, there's so many stigmas around any mental
Yes.
health, you know. With BPD, I think it gets such a bad rep because
Well,
the
the
name
name's fucked up.
itself
Yeah,
is
the
so
name's fucked up.
fucked. It
It's not
actually pisses me off.
same.
Like, it makes me so
Same.
fucking mad because I have to like anytime, and I catch myself doing it anytime I'm letting someone know because I'm very open about it. And so once I finally feel like I'm like in a place of friendship where I can be open about it, I'll tell people. But I always find myself catching myself. I'll be like, oh, well, I do have borderline personalities, or I don't have multiple personalities,
Right.
because people constantly are like, oh, so you have people up in there. I'm like, it's me. It's just me in here.
That's
But
me.
you know, I
Mm,
like, and so I find myself constantly catching myself, which I shouldn't have to do. But that's like one of the stigmas around it. There's so
it is.
many. I mean, it's
Yes.
sad how many things push at BPD, and there's such like a negative look on it. But I also think like for myself at least, and things I've come to love about myself, like BPD has this look of, you know, the people with BPD being such like monsters almost is like the word that comes to my
Yeah.
name. My
Yeah.
brain is like, we're looked at as being such terrible people because our emotions are so big and so broad and so
Mhm.
out
Mhm.
there. But I just look at him like, yeah, this is just who I am. And like, I'm so happy to have my emotions be so big. And sometimes it sucks to feel on 1,000 when someone else would barely feel it, but it's who I am. And and when I'm on 1,000 for a happy reason, it's like the best feeling on earth. So
Right.
I think that's something that I just had to get out there because it's looked at in such a negative way. And people just don't realize that like we
It
just
really
feel our
is.
feelings. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. And it's also not our fault. And it's also not something that we're trying to like beyond accepting ourselves. We're not trying to
yeah.
embrace it. And like we're not trying to make
Yeah.
it more than what it is. We're not trying to
Yeah.
keep it that way, right? Like this is something that's happened to us and has been perpetuated by our experiences and by our responses to those experiences because most of the time as the things are happening to us, we don't have the facilities yet to like understand how it's going to affect us in the
Yeah.
future. In
Or the
fact,
control.
or the control. And I don't think we
Yeah.
ever do at any age.
Yeah.
So to say like, well, you have BPD, like how am I supposed to trust you? It's like, yeah,
Yeah.
BPD, how am I supposed to trust you? You know what
Yeah.
I
I
mean?
was
Like,
just about to say that. It's like, I could say the same about you, motherfucker.
yeah,
Like,
like
you're a human too. Like, we're all just
right.
fucking human.
We are all fallible. And I like to say this analogy often in multiple capacities is like, just because, well, one way to look at it, all of this is like, just because somebody takes Tylenol for a headache doesn't mean that, and it goes away, doesn't mean that when you take Tylenol and you have a headache, it's going to go away. Some people have to take insulin. Some people are born without hands. Some people are born without sight. Like we all are biologically faulty in some capacity. And sometimes those and faulty is like such a like harsh word, but some of those biological like mechanisms that don't turn out so great for us are things that happen way later down the road and that are really not in our control at the end of the day. But it is up to us to decide how we are going to live moving forward, knowing these things about ourselves, having this deep knowledge about who we really are and the things we've been through and how it's affected us. All that, all of those things, all of your symptoms are truly your saviors. And I heard
Yeah.
this back from borderline and it changed my life. It's like everything that you experience symptomatically, your anxiety, your depression, your sleeping habits, your eating habits, your relational habits and behaviors, and just the way you perceive the world, these are all things that are trying to tell you something. So if you can
Hmm.
view your symptoms as, oh, okay, today I'm like really low. I need XYZ.
Hmm.
Um, I probably didn't eat well enough yesterday. I probably didn't sleep last night. So instead of jumping to my life's fucking shit and everything sucks and blah, 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 it's really about creating like an owner's manual of who you are and like how you exist in this moment right now in this specific time in life and what parts of those are helpful to you, what parts of those are leading you towards your alignment, towards who you really want to be and what you want to do and how you want to act and feel, and what parts of those are holding you back from those things. Like what is going on here? Like, let's just go and tinker through the whole body. And that's what like I do in my sessions, but there's so many different ways to do that. And it's not just clinical, it's not just holistic, it's not just on your own. It's all of those things in combination, in whatever combination makes sense to your programming. So like viewing yourself in that way, me viewing myself and my symptoms as saviors, as clues, and pointing me in the direction of what I really need, the nourishment I need. It's really changed my perspective on a lot of the experiences that I've had in my life, and why I've had them, or like, just what it's brought me to, in the today times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think also like when you were saying that, I had like a vision in my head of like what I imagine that. I think an owner's manual is so spot on. And it's so true because put all those things into a spot and like figure it out, but also leave room for growth and leave room to like add to that manual
Yeah.
and to take away, like you were saying, rip a page out if it's not fitting,
Right.
but keep room to add new pages so that you can just keep growing and learning and experiencing.
Yes. And not like trying to, jump off a cliff while you're doing
Yeah.
it. To
Yeah.
really want to be here is a
Yeah.
big feat. And like, it's a choice, of course. We all have autonomy and we all are allowed to treat our own selves any which way. Um, but yeah, to your point, it's like we have the option to change, our circumstances. We have the options to transform and to, through our resiliency, to make better choices for ourselves than were made for us.
Yeah.
Um, and to, yeah, fill those cracks in with golden goo and our own love, and like better people, better places, more exciting things that, I don't know, just fill us up with like more of the substance to encourage the passion to live, encourage the drive to try again, because especially for those of us who have been through a lot, or we experience highs and lows, it's like, oh my God, when is this going to end? Like, oh no, I'm back in it. I've definitely
Yeah.
experienced that myself quite a few
Yeah.
times.
Me as well.
And it really is a wild, wild thing, how capable you are. And when you don't give up on yourself, the kind of hope that comes from that, like once you get to the other side of it, you can look back and be like, wow, I really did that. And it builds that self-reliance, it builds that self-esteem, and you become almost addicted to healing yourself in a way, um, because you start to see so much evidence of it being uh you see so much
Born
evidence.
almost, like it just
Yeah.
getting there.
Yeah, you're like, oh my gosh, wait, hold on, I didn't just get triggered by that as bad.
Yeah.
And it's not even that I didn't get triggered, I didn't get triggered as bad.
Yeah.
That's a fucking step up.
It's
That's,
so true though.
yeah, like even those
And it's
tiny
something to be
moments.
proud of too.
Yeah.
Like even the like you were just about to say, even the tiniest moment where you're like, oh,
Yep.
that didn't hurt as bad as it did before,
Yep.
or I didn't feel as shitty. Even that, the
Yep.
as, that's fucking dope.
Yep.
Like be
That's healing.
proud of those little moments of healing because
Yeah.
that's a crack mending itself just
Yes.
slightly. And maybe it's not all the way mended, and that's okay. But at
Right.
least it's a starting point.
Right. Yes. Yes. Well, I feel like that may be a good stopping point, unless there was anything else you wanted to add or share, or another question that maybe we didn't go through.
I don't think so. I think I kind of hit everything.
I think
I
you did.
think, yeah, I think we hit everything. I think I'm trying to think of anything else, but I don't really think I have anything else. We hit a lot of points.
We really did more. Like, I'm so, well, first of all, I just want to say I'm so thankful and grateful again that you wanted to be a part of this. And I knew that our conversation was just going to be an absolute blast, first of all. And second of all, just there's so much insight and so much wisdom in you. And I'm so honored to have witnessed you this past couple of years. become who you are and become more of who you are. And you really have inspired me in a lot of ways. Like our friendship growing to what it has is like so important to me. And it's just really beautiful when you open yourself up to the world for who you really are, good, bad, or indifferent, and you find somebody else who's doing the same thing, and you can just feel the like beauty in it all. And I just am super appreciative of you sharing your story. And I know that there will be lots of other people who really, really resonate with your journey and where you are now, even.
Don't make me cry, Floyd.
That's my job sometimes. I don't know what to tell you. No,
How many times have I said
I know.
that?
I know. I'm like,
No, I'm grateful that I was able to come on and have these conversations with you, because even when we're just having normal conversations, I'm very blessed to be in your life and your circle and your journey as well. So it means a lot to me. And I'm excited for everyone to kind of get to see a different aspect of BPD. Not to say that there isn't so many great podcasts and so many things out there, but to
totally,
listen
yeah.
to this episode and know that like there's more people too. The more
Mhm.
like me, just a basic little gal who feels the same way. So
I beg to differ on the basic, but I feel you. Yeah. Thank you so, so much. I'm really, really proud of this episode with you, and really, really excited to watch it and edit it and share it
I know,
with
I
you.
can't wait.
Yeah. Thank you so much for listening to my first episode of the Fire in My Belly podcast. I hope that you were able to take a lot away from this episode. And Sage is such an incredible individual and an incredible friend, and I am so, so grateful for her existence on this planet. With that said, my next podcast will be featuring my own mom, and we're going to be talking about ways in which a parent can show up for a child with a severe mental health issue, as well as all of the different angles and roles and positions and phases that a mother plays in a child's life. And I'm really excited to share that with you in just a couple of weeks. So, again, thank you for listening so much and have a beautiful rest of your day.